So this session will launch ourselves with the Tara praises. So if you want to turn to the Tara praises. And we'll start at the beginning of that Tara praises section that says invocation. And these Tara praises are best said aloud, best done with the visualization, even if you're not totally sure of the layout of the 21 Taras. Main green Tara is in the center. And then the first one of the praise is the one directly below her. And then they go boom, 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 clockwise like that in a sort of spiral circle. And same as with white Tara, the reason why the colors of the 21 Taras are white, yellow, red, and dark blue is because those represent peace, increase, power, and wrath. So the praises indicate what they're up to. So it's not by accident, but if you're ever wanting a more detailed explanation of the 21 Taras, it's in that Dropbox that the whole Power of Mantra class has in the class handout section. So I'll send that link again and again to everybody involved with the course, but there's lots of good details about the 21 Taras. So like everything that you do aloud, it helps purify speech karma and create powerful speech for the future. But these 21 Taras are also said to really help bring energy into daily life as well as spiritual practice. So we'll use this as our motivation, and then we'll do a little check-in about the practices, and then we'll do the practice one last time. So the invocation. From your sublime abode at the Putala, O Tara, born from the great letter Tam, your crown adorned with Amitabha, action mother of the Buddhas of the three times, Tara, please come with your attendants. The gods and demigods bow to your lotus feet, O Tara, you who rescue all who are destitute. To you, Mother Tara, I pay homage. Or am I prostrate to the noble transcendent liberator? Homage, Tara, swift heroic, eyes like lightning instantaneous, sprung from opening stamens of Lord of three worlds, cheerborn lotus. Homage, you, space combines 100 autumns at fullness, blazing with light rays resplendent as 1,000 star collection. Homage, golden blue on lotus, waterborne in and adorned, giving effort, calm, austerity, patience, meditation, homage, crown of Tathagatas, actions triumph without end, relied on by conqueror's children, having reached every perfection. Homage, filling with Tutare, who desire direction and speed. Trampling with her feet the seven worlds, able to draw forth all being. Homage, worship by the all-Lord, Shakriyagurama, honored by the hosts of spirits, quatrains, Gandhavas, Yakshas. Homage with the tray and bass sounds, destroying the subject diagram. Her feet pressing left and right, blazing in a raging fire blaze. Homage to the destroyer of Mara's champions, she with frowning lotus visage, who is slayer of all enemies. Homage at the heart of fingers, adorn her with fruitful mudra, light ring masses all excited, all directions with adornment. Homage, sheets of joyous radiant, crown emitting garlands of light, mirthful laughing, subjugating Mara's devas. Homage, she able to summon all of guardians' assembly, shaking, frowning with their wounds, saving from every misfortune. Homage, crown adorned with crescent, who all ornaments shine. Amitabha in her head, not sending how much light eternal. Homage, she lit with the blaze like eon ending fire and light. Rush of left and joy surrounds you, troops of enemies destroyed. Homage, she who strikes the ground with her palm and with her beads, scowling with the letter, the seven levels she does conquer. Homage, happy, virtuous, peaceful, she whose field is peace nirvana. She endowed with foam and soul, destroyer of the great evil. Homage she with joy surrounded, tearing those bodies asunder, liberate. Praise with whom and knowledge mantra, arrangement and lead. Homage to her with letter of the shape of syllable. By foot stamping shakes the three worlds, marrow and India. Homage holding in her hand the Hemagud of Devalay. With my spoken Tara and pay, totally dispelling poison. Homage she who gods and their kings and the kinneras do honor. Armored in a joyful splendor, she dispels bad dreams and con. Homage she with two eyes bright, with radiance of sun and full moon. With twice Hara and Tutare, she dispels severe contagion. Homage full of liberating, bow by the set of three natures, destroys hosts of spirits, yakshas, and raise corpses supreme to these praises with the root mantras and prostrations, thus are 21. And so feel the blessings of all 21 Taras and relax your attention. So sometimes when we go and ask our lamas for advice about success in some virtuous practice, they will say, be practical, be logical, but also just do more Tara praises. Yeah. And when I'm hanging out with my own teacher, who is, like 82-year-old Tibetan Lama, like old school classic, and he is a great manifester of things. Things happen just as he says they will. And he really has the power to motivate people really beautifully, but also for unexpected resources to come. When I'm hanging out with him, like if we're just like going for a walk downtown to get a cup of coffee or something, and I kind of listen to him whispering under his breath, and I'm like, Geshe-la, what are you saying? And he's like, Tara. Always, he's always doing Tara praises in quiet moments in between things. So you're kind of like, oh yeah, yeah, like when you're walking, and either the Tara mantra or the Tara praises, and I once asked him, like, why all the time in these quiet moments? And he says, mouth never empty. Better, isn't it? Mouth never empty. So his mouth is always full of Tara, Tara praises, Tara mantras. And it's interesting because there is a lightness to him, despite him being in his 80s, it's palpable. Like he's ready to get off of his bum and go at any moment. There's a lightness. And I think that what we're trying to get into with all meditations is that feeling of very grounded, very settled, but not like collapsed. Yeah, not like an anchor, not like, oh, I gotta get up. And I'm not talking about the physical body, because the physical body cooperates and doesn't cooperate day by day, weather by weather. Some days you feel heavier, some days you feel lighter. I'm talking about that energetic quality that's ready to just change gears. And it not feel like a jolt, it not feel abrupt. And when it's time to do something for the welfare of sentient beings, you are Tara and you leap to their aid. The folk story of Tara, of course, one of many folk stories of Tara is that there was beautiful Chenrezig with, an eye in every palm of his, 1,000 hands and all of his heads. And he was seeing the suffering of all sentient beings in all directions with perfect, compassionate equanimity. And it was overwhelming, and he started to cry. And the tears formed a lake, and from the lake came Tara. And she said, don't worry, I got it. Yeah. And she leaped to the aid of sentient beings. So there's a swiftness and an action in this archetypal energy that all of us need. And I think that it's really useful to sit with when you've known something needed to be done, but you just couldn't start. Yeah, or something needed to be done and you didn't know where to start, or just those like first sort of steps, having the feeling of like rusty gears just starting up again, like an old car or something. That Tara energy is what we need. So when we were talking about getting rid of those 3 types of laziness, like the regular laziness of procrastination, but then the laziness of busyness that is too fast, too quick, doing a million things at once, instead of the important thing, or the laziness of despondency, which just feels like depression and heaviness, Tara just kind of pierces through that vibe. So intellectually and analytically, we want to be looking at our habits of laziness and the things that block or stifle or suffocate our energy. We want to look at those intellectually, often, just in reflective moments. But in terms of just changing the energy pattern, we don't need to over-intellectualize too much when you're actually on the cushion and you're not doing analytical meditation. Just call on Tara, your inner growing Tara and the outer already developed Tara. It's that meeting of minds, that meeting of energies can really help shift those patterns of stuckness. So the fact that green Tara is green is related to the wind element. And for whatever reason, the wind element is green in Tibetan Buddhism. You're like, is wind green? Is it? Oh, all right. But there you go. The fire element is red. That makes sense. The water element is blue. That makes sense. The earth element is yellow. Sort of makes sense. Anyway, the wind element is green. So when we're looking at Tara, she has that dual thing of, in this case with green Tara, wind represented by green, but then Amitabha in her hair knot, who is red. So there's an affiliation with kind of two main energies, and both Taras, all Taras, come under the heading of the Lotus family or the Padma family. And you'll see Amitabha, the red Buddha, in her hair knot indicating that, which shows us that there's something very powerful happening when we do these practices related to attachment. And green Tara, you see one of her legs is drawn up, showing that she's completely renounced all worldly desire, and then her other foot out, ready to leap to the aid of sentient beings. So this idea of attachment energy, just in its raw form, is like fire. Yeah, it's like the fire element, red. And the fire element can, when it's in its distorted form, when it's in pure attachment form, consumes and consumes and consumes, right? It's like real fire that just keeps needing wood added to it, and it's never enough. It just burns it up and burns it up and burns it up. And fire in its distorted form within us is taking this attachment issue where whenever we are driven by attachment, it'll never be enough. Whatever it is, it'll never be enough. It's like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. It's like, yes, more, more. And when you're in that headspace, everything becomes sticky. Everything becomes kind of like, it's hard to kind of move your focus away from it. Like when you're absorbed into something you know is unhealthy, but you almost can't break your gaze. Do you know this feeling, right? And so when attachment captures our attention, then our powers of discrimination get flooded by that hunger and that fixation and that obsessed quality. But when it's not, when it's Tara energy, that same fire has the good element of fire, which is warmth and illumination. So if you were to take just the raw kind of neutral quality of fire and tip it in the Lotus Buddha family direction, it would be exactly as we want to be with people, which is warm. Yeah, warm and abundant, and also illuminating, full of light, able to help people see things more clearly, just like the brightness of a candle would or the brightness of fire would. So when you're doing Tara practice, if you're doing it as your main practice, you're not doing other practices, what can happen is that on a good day, you're a lot warmer and you're a lot more able to illuminate and have discriminating awareness with a lot more sharpness than usual. And that becomes the dominant energy in your life. And then when you're not focused, when you're sort of vaguing out or you're having a bad day, probably the affliction that manifests is going to be attachment. Because it's kind of like you're working with that energy. So if you're on top of it, it's going to go in the good direction. And if you're not on top of it, but it's still kind of part of your daily life routine, that'll be kind of the first one to kick in. Yeah, unless something else overpowers it, like a really obnoxious person, then you're like, oh, it was going to be anger, but nope. Or it was going to be attachment, but now it's anger, right? So none of the afflictions are particularly worse or better than the others. They all take turns. They all drive each other crazy. They all reinforce one another. When attachment doesn't get what it wants, then comes anger, right? Simple as that. And attachment can never fully get what it wants because it's based in exaggeration. Yes. So it's doomed to fail. And anger either looks like obvious anger or it looks like depression, right? You implode or you explode. And your body either gets very fiery and agitated and anxious and, kind of that busy, panicky, that attachment thwarted feeling, or it goes into stagnation. Yeah, the heavy melancholy. I can't get out of bed. I can't get off the couch, just heaviness. So when you have that kind of thwarted attachment feeling, it's good to be able to identify what it is. Because raw anxiety often has an element of thwarted or feared to be thwarted attachment. And when you have that very heavy, stagnant energy, that I can't get out of bed, my digestive juices will not rumble, everything is just kind of stuck, no fire in the belly, quite literally, that also thwarted attachment imploding. So Tara helps just move it. Yeah, because sometimes it's how you got this way, the problematic thinking that arrived you there, but here you are. And, once the karma has ripened, it kind of has to finish. A lot of the work we're doing is preventing negative karma from ripening in the first place. But once it has ripened, there's not a whole lot you can do. So with Tara, you're trying to break up the energy of either the anxiety that got you too speedy or the depression that got you too heavy. Yeah. Because it's the suffering has arisen. So now how do we manage the energy that accompanies the suffering or the energy that accompanies the affliction? Because intellectually, you already know what's up. Yeah, or hopefully, probably, right? You're anxiety, based in fear of losing something I think is necessary, which obviously is exaggerated. Attachment, curse you. There you are again. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily make your anxiety better to know, does it? Once it's fully fledged. Yeah. Or your depression better once it's fully fledged. So Tara works within the Lotus family, both green Tara and white Tara. And I think that practically speaking, if you're of a kind of a heavy depressive type, that kind of, you're having trouble with movement, with digestion, with stiffness, with processing information quickly, with getting the job done, with procrastination, green Tara. And if you're feeling very, very anxious and you need kind of settling and calming, and it feels like you're burning all of your fuel, which is kind of depleting your life force, white Tara. Yeah. But both are going to do the job. So, whichever one you have an affinity with is good too. And all the Taras, right? All the Taras. So if you do 21 Taras, even just on their own. I have a friend who does all of her exercising while reciting Tara praises. She's on the treadmill doing the Tara praises. It's why not? Why not? Better than listening to, I don't know, Britney Spears or whatever people listen to now. Yeah. Bless your heart. Who may be Tara? Who's to say? Who's to say? Right. All right. So questions so far as well. If you got questions about any of the sadhanas that we've been looking at or any premise that we've touched in Tantra so far.
Want the easy ones or the hard ones?
Hit me, whatever.
So on the details on 21 Taras, we'll start easy. There are a lot of stuff here that we, don't really understand. Hari Mark Moon of Deva Lake 4. How do we learn more so we can kind of
as I mentioned in the Dropbox, there's a commentary to each of the 21 on each one. Yeah.
In gory detail.
In a lot of detail and a practice related to each, but the book itself, right? Remember, this whole course is based on this book.
Yeah.
In the chapter on Tara is an explanation of each of the 21 Taras, and in the class we went through each one. And yeah. Okay. So when you're seeing a all caps letter, that's related to the mantra of that Tara. Right? When you see Tare and Pei and Tutare and Hara, there's some additions to the regular core Tara mantra that each specific Tara will get, just how white Tara is Om Tare, Tutare, Ture, Mama Arya Punyanjana Pushtam Kuruye, Soha, right? So it's the main Tara mantra plus some extras. All of the Taras are like that, main Tara mantra plus some extras. So when you see letters in caps, that's what it's talking about. poetic renderings are going to miss pieces. So sometimes it's obvious whether she's a wrathful one or if she's an increasing one or a pacifying one or a controlling one just by reading the verse itself and getting used to the verse itself. You can kind of feel the energy just by looking or by looking at her image, but the commentaries will give you detail if you're curious. Yeah. And it's okay to just pick one to, like, if that's what you need specific help with in your life. Like, for example, some of them are really good with like conflict in families or really good with like infectious diseases, or, there's very specific energies that each one of them helps with. So if you ever want to zoom in on one, it's not like the rest are going to get jealous or something, Yeah. But anything that sounds violent, right? Or anything that sounds, like trampling, yes, trampling, or enemies or conquering or whatever. Remember, it's that same theme of karma and disturbing emotions are the enemy, and that is what she is trampling. Yeah. Or representatives therein. Yeah, go ahead, online.
So I'm curious because in our society we don't have a lot of heroic figures in the feminine. If there's some movies or some kind of how you find female archetypes that help inspire this, because I think generally it's like I'm not Catholic, so I never got the Mary thing, and I don't really have much experience with the divine feminine. So I'm curious if you have some suggestions to modeling places I could see something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I always start with my own family. Yeah. And so maybe think of your own family, but like my dad is loving, kind, wonderful mountain man, bear, Santa Claus kind of a guy, right? He's wonderful. You would love my dad. Everyone loves my dad. He used to look like Jesus. Now he looks like Santa Claus, and he has the vibe of both. Like, he's a therapist, right? He's adorable. In my life growing up, he was a constant source of solid advice, good practical stuff. But sometimes if I was in distress, he was just gonna be in the recliner is where he's gonna be, right? Whereas my mom was like, all right, let's get it done. Yeah, let's go. Let's fix it. Precision and a swiftness and let's get it done. Let's not overthink it. Let's move with the wind. Power of her in her best that I feel like is intrinsically feminine. And like, think of women in your life who have that, like, let's get it done, or I've got you. Yeah, I got. Maybe it's your mother, maybe it's your grandmother, maybe it's a sister, maybe it's yourself. And there is part of yourself that has that. When you see a need, you leap to the aid, like a mother, getting her child out of traffic. She's not going to talk him down and say, oh, darling, don't walk into traffic. No, she's just going to grab him and take him out. Yeah. And then explain later. Yes. And it's not to say that men don't have that. Of course they do. And we all have the divine masculine and the divine feminine growing within us all the time. And the point of Tantra is to balance them within ourselves as an individual and integrate them within ourselves as an individual. And sometimes we get a little out of balance, and you can feel it when you're a little bit out of balance, and you start craving things to bring you into balance. And some of the things you crave are normal human healthy cravings, and some of the things you crave are not going to do you any good in the long term. And see your own life for details. Yeah. But the divine, right? So the divine feminine is something that we can reach in any sort of person, male or female bodied, right? And from a tantric perspective, really looking at the energetic quality of things is the main thing. The physicality is not the point. But if you want just kind of the sense of that, like, swift power and that quick action, I mean, the new Wonder Woman movies are awesome. Right? Or Viola Davis is in that new movie, The Woman King. Have you guys seen it? She's like this fierce warrior, and she's, like fully into her 50s, and she's like, kicking all the butt. And I do not condone the killing. Do not condone it. But if you think of all the bad guys as afflictions, colonialism as karma and disturbing emotions manifest, there you go, done. Right. So anyway, there's a lot over time if you think about it. But what I always loved, and I don't know about you guys, but if you're into Eastern religions, you probably at some point, in the 90s, watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those kind of like beautiful martial arts, that kind of like fluid wind-like movement, that divine feminine. Yeah, it's not got the harsh choppy, it's got that fluid, swift movement like that. So, you just bundle that up and into some sort of sense in yourself, and then you look within and see how you already have that in some burgeoning form. And it's nothing to do with your physicality per se, but elicit it. And that combination of one foot drawn in, one foot out is really quite powerful in and of itself. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but just some more food for thought.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. If you think of anything else, please let me know. Thanks.
Ask your family, look in your family stories. You probably got a granny in there somewhere who was totally Tara. Right? Yeah.
If I can just add an example. Coming out of COVID, it's been very fascinating to see how to bring people together to try to take the action to kind of get us maybe back to some sort of new normalcy. I'm routinely impressed with the fact that it's the women in the community. You see it at all the Dharma centers, the new directors, the new SPCs, even here, the people that have been stepping up and helping out. It's just so many of them. It touches my heart is because they know we need help and they may not know how to do the job, but they're the ones going, I'll just show up, point me in the right direction. And I find that very inspiring when I think about her.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about like how we get socialized as men and women, the positive as well as the negative, right? Because we always talk about the negative. We talk about toxic masculinity, and then we talk about the way women oppress themselves and disempower themselves, and all of that is known, and that ground has been covered, and we put it to one side while still acknowledging its existence. What's the good side? What's the good side of how we get socialized? And the way women are socialized is be ready to help. Be ready to, even if you don't know what you're doing, be ready to have it explained to you. Yeah, be ready to have it explained to you. Be ready to be totally new to something, but just like come with willingness. And that willingness to like learn something new in order to help. It doesn't get quite as tangled up with pride and ego, I think, is the way men get socialized. Poor guys, right? The way they get socialized is if you don't already know how to do it, that's like a source of guilt and shame and humiliation. You should just magically know everything just innately or something, right? And whereas we're like, we have no idea, but we'll try. Show me. I'll do it. I just, I'm going to need to be skilled up. But there's kind of an innate confidence that were I to be shown, I could learn how. I just need to be shown. So take the good part of your socialization, and think that there's just a little bit more humility combined with confidence built into how we got grown up, because we're supposed to help, right? Yeah. So if it's an expectation and a pressure, that's yucky. But if we decide to make it voluntary, it's beautiful. Interesting. Yeah, like this. So, as in the folk story of Tara, there is no inherent male, there is no inherent female, and yet so few beings show the aspect of being female bodied on the spiritual path. Tara decided to stay in the female body in order to show you can do it in any kind of body. And remember that the Buddha was always playing with convention and reality. Like he would say very firmly, the caste system is BS, right? Racism is stupid. He would say that in his day, and he ordained people of all races. Yeah, and in his day, that was a radical thing, especially because he's saying, yeah, we believe in karma. Karma and the caste system do not go together. Don't put them together like this. The way people treat you is, of course, related to your karma, but the way you treat people creates your karma. So treat them well. Treat them well. And sort of plugging people into a caste based on their birth or their race is a total misunderstanding of karma. It's making karma into fate, which is nonsense. Yeah, karma is not fate. And then, his mother-in-law, his foster mother, who was also his aunt, because, ancient India, right? His foster mother, who was also his aunt, was like, well, I'd like to be ordained. And he was like, you're a girl. And she was like, I know, right? But I still wanna. And you know, and then Ananda's like, oh, I don't know. This is gonna cause a disturbance in the forest. I don't know, but he said, can women become enlightened as equally as men? And he was like, yeah, of course. So ordained his mom, his foster mom, who was also his auntie, and 500 of her ladies in waiting. We hope they were all into it. There was no peer pressure involved, but anyway. And I think that if we think about the fact that the Buddha was acknowledging the conventions of the time, that there is racism and there is sexism and there is classism, acknowledge those, and then consciously address them in ways that are radical for the time, but not so radical as to lose the connection to the community. And so it's a very interesting way of viewing activism, where you push the boundaries of what the norm is, and you increase the equanimity of the area you're in, but not so aggressively that you alienate people. You try and do it at a speed they can cope with. It was interesting, skillful means on his part. And that a lot of the vows for women, for example, were about keeping them safe, because traditionally, if you saw a woman walking around by herself, she was someone who was a sex worker. And of course, tons of sex workers became nuns, but once they're nuns, they don't want to be doing that work anymore, right? And so he knew that if they were seen by themselves, that there would be an assumption. So he said, have a friend. It wasn't a value judgment. But sometimes now when we look at the vows and like, oh, women nuns are not allowed to travel alone. That's so sexist. No, it was brilliant. It was a way of saying, if you want to be a nun, here's a safe way to do it. And now we look at it and realize the core of the vow is about safety and reputation. So if you're maintaining safety and reputation for the sake of the community, you're keeping the vow. So there's always layers, right? Always layers in Buddhism. And I think that if we take things too much on the surface, we miss the profundity of what a radical the Buddha was in his time. The way of acknowledging convention while knowing the ultimate. It's fascinating. Yeah, other questions about the sadhanas or any of the practices that we've been talking about the last weeks? Yeah.
I have a question, and you can feel free not to answer, but I'm curious, and I hope others are, about just your own story, and you're inspiring to us. And so,
what part?
I've totally met you or online, last few months, and I'm just curious, and your own, what you can share that would help inspire us through our own struggles through all this meditation, because you seem to have more joy.
Right. Practice makes perfect is part of it, right? Like, I think that I love hearing biographies of different teachers. I love reading biographies and hearing stories. And I love that. It's inspiring, it's good. And I will tell you some things, but what I want you to hear it with is the ears of, that is a regular person, which shows regular people can do this, which is why His Holiness is always saying, I'm just a simple monk. It's like he is more than a simple monk, but he is also a simple monk, because he's trying to say these amazing things you respect and love about me are achievable for you. It's not a separate species, that this is the human potential. So if you hear it with that, like, ordinary people can do this, it's just a matter of conditions and time and engagement, then hear all stories that way, right? And we hear these amazing stories of the lamas coming over from Tibet to India and, like walking through the snow and almost starving, and then getting tuberculosis, and then being in India and the weather's all different. And it was epic, right? They had to adapt or die. So the ones that adapted are remarkable. But we would also be remarkable if we adapted in horrible conditions like that. We would also be remarkable. So it's like that combination of Dharma plus hardship makes growth. Dharma plus hardship equals growth.
And so in my own case, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder where I have a lot of chronic pain. All my joints hurt. The casual name for it is the flopsy. Everything is flopsy, right? It's like rubber bands losing their stretch. And so they either stiffen up or they fall apart completely. And it's quite painful, right? And so when I was a kid, I thought pain and suffering were the same thing. And then I came across Buddhism and I realized they are different things. And that changed my life, right? That you can have pain, but it doesn't need to equate to suffering, especially if you really organize your thoughts differently. And then if you organize your thoughts differently, then actually the pain itself will ease and it changes over time, as well as your relation to it, right? The pain and your relationship to the pain changes. And, I was a, very depressed, angry teenager, mostly because of all the physical pain I was in. It was just so frustrating. And it's so hard to, exercise and eat well when you're exhausted because you're in pain all the time. And it's still an issue, but finding the Dharma really helped me frame my life in a way where I could decide that actually this was my gateway to compassion. Because otherwise it was an idyllic life, loving parents who stayed married, who liked me. It was nice, right? It's not common, somewhat common, right? But not everyone has nice parents who like them and who were like, yeah, Buddhism, whatever, kid, have fun. Yeah, rock on. You're going to a retreat. All right, whatever. They were nice about it, right? That's uncommon. So I had this blessed life really in a lot of ways, but I had a lot of physical pain. And so without the physical pain, would I have had the same catalyst to investigate the causes for pain? Would I have had the same impetus to reach into what are the sources fundamentally for pain? And how does one do anything about it without falling into despair or anger, So, I just used to sit with my little local Zen group. They were nice people. They were all old. They let me sit with them. Thought I was a cute kid, I'm sure. They're like, all right, well, she's okay, whatever, and then I left home and I moved to the university town nearby, which, like all university towns, has more grooviness. And there I found more Tibetan Buddhism, and I always loved His Holiness. And so hung out with them. And then, when I was about 19, I realized I had everything I'd ever wanted. Right. I had a job I loved. I had a house I loved. I was thinking about buying a house because there was all these cool loans for young single women. So there was all these cool low income loans. And I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a house. And I just got promoted at my job. I was a baker. I just got promoted to a manager. I had money, house, car, partner, cat, veggie garden, all the things sorted. And I was 19 and sitting on my porch assessing that, I thought, I could just see my whole life play out. I'll be the manager for a while, and then I'll eventually probably buy the bakery, and then maybe I'll make several bakeries, and then maybe we'll have cool open mic nights, and there'll be art on the walls, and it'll be a think globally, act locally, and it's all coming together. How beautiful. And it terrified me. Yeah, because it's that's what's supposed to make you happy. And I don't know that any of those ingredients are actually the source of happiness. They're wonderful, but they're not giving happiness. They're just conditions for happiness when I'm in the mood for it. So then what? So I decided to be kind of radical. And I thought I need to change countries so that I'm not with people I know who are going to have expectations of how I am and should be. I need to go somewhere else. And I probably need to go somewhere where I live at a Dharma center. Almost as soon as I had that thought, a friend of mine came into the bakery one day. I'm rolling out croissant dough, same as every day, enjoying it, listening to music, folding the croissant dough. And she's like, dude, I was at this place. I kept thinking of you. And I was like, where were you? And she said, oh, I was at this Buddhist center, and you can work there and you can study there, and they do work exchange. And I just totally thought of you. And I said, where was it? She said, Australia. I was like, okay, I'm going. And I went in 2 weeks. Much to the shock of everyone I knew. But anyway, breaking up with people, telling the boss, putting all the stuff in storage, selling the car, finding somewhere for the cat. Cat was fine. It was fine. It was a whole thing though. And so it was abrupt, but I felt like it would be so easy to let life get ahead of steam, and to just keep doing what I had been doing and being relatively content, but not really breaking any new ground. And it was really hard moving countries, and Australia is beautiful and cool. And where I lived at Chenrezig Institute is a remarkable place. And we had all sorts of nuns and monks and Tibetan lamas living there, and lots of cool young lay people having all sorts of fun. It was ideal in a lot of ways, but Australians are not as comfortable talking about and expressing emotions as Americans. And so I found it a little British stiff upper lippy, a little bit stifling in that way. And my Americanisms were not as celebrated as I thought they would be. Right? It turns out that other countries have an ambivalent relationship with the United States. So, there was years of that. But anyway, it was hard, but hard in a way that I knew was growth. And then so it goes, and the years go by, and here we are 20 years later. Like that. So that's the short version of the story. But, and you don't have to be radical with your choices like that. You don't have to pick up everything you own and put it into storage and run away to another country. But there is something to be said for breaking a pattern and seeing yourself in a different context to see who you are, divorced from people's expectations of you. And maybe you experience that even just traveling, just on a holiday or something. It's like there's something in you when you're traveling that is more prepared to take risks, is more prepared to reach out to strangers, is more prepared to kind of make connections in a different way than when you're just at home with your same old people, and then you come back to your same old people with fresh eyes, and that helps. So that's the short version. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So far, so good. So far, so good. Weird to be back in the States. Now I'm like, shut up about your emotions. Enough. I've heard enough. The Australians have gotten to me. No, I'm kidding. Please tell me your emotions. Yeah. So yeah, any other bits and pieces, or even just like logistics of framing the practice in your everyday life? Questions like that? Yeah.
I was kind of wondering more about the Buddha families.
Yeah.
I just think it's recently like, okay, Chenrezig is also around the level. And Manjushri as well.
Akshobhya, the five Buddha families, they kind of warrant their own course, and they're a beautiful, beautiful premise. But I guess for the sake of like Kriya Tantra, lower Tantra, which we're doing, we only use 3 of those 5. Yeah, so only 3 of the 5 Buddha families come into play for Kriya Tantra. And what you'll have is Amitabha, the Lotus family, Padma family that we've been doing, which is Tara, which is Chenrezig. And then we have Manjushri, which is the Akshobhya Buddha family or Vajra family. And Akshobhya Vajra family is related to the element of water. And so similar to fire, right? We're looking at the elemental quality of energy and how it can be distorted or it can be productive. And so the elemental quality of water within ourselves, in terms of just an energy that we live with every day, is, think about like when you are boiling mad, boiling mad, the way water itself, with all the bubbles of the boil, reflects reality in a distorted way. Yeah, and that's what anger does. It reflects reality in a distorted way, which isn't to say it doesn't reflect some aspects of truth, which is part of why it's so hard to let go of anger. Because when you're angry, you observe things, and some of the things you observe, you've accurately observed. That is something that's happening, but the conclusion you're coming to is incorrect. Also, when you're angry, sometimes you don't even observe things correctly, and it's all jumbled together like boiling water. Yeah, things you observe correctly, things you're not observing correctly, projections that you're making, assumptions that you're having, and there's just a lot of analysis in anger, right? Whereas like attachment, you're just kind of like, I crave, in kind of a caveman way, like I want chocolate, chocolate, I want company, I want comfort, I want sex, I want fire, I want, gets a little bit like that energy. Anger is a lot more talky. Yeah, it's got a lot to say. Like, think about when you're really angry about something. You start with whatever triggered the anger and justifying that and going over the story of that. And then often it reminds you of other times you've been angry in a similar way, and then how people suck in general, and then everything like that of that genre. And you have so much to say to yourself, but it's distorted like boiling water, and it's moving like boiling water. And, anger, when it's in its boiling form like that, all the distortions, all of the words, all of the movement, and there's no real settling. The other thing water can do when it's distorted is freeze. And when it's frozen, it's like cloudy and it doesn't reflect clearly either. But think of the anger when it's not the boiling anger, but when you're just like a rock of ice at your heart that is just pissed, right? You're just pissed. You're just ice. Yeah. And the way you judge people, and the way you block people and the way you kind of go into yourself. And that coldness, that kind of anger is also a part of that elemental quality. So that's it's in its distorted form. And that's what the Akshobhya Buddha family is working with, is to make it not frozen, not boiling, but to be still, and still like a mountain lake, so still that what it reflects perfectly, like a mirror. And so the result of practicing using Akshobhya, the Vajrabuddha family, is that elemental quality of kind of anger, water, whatever, becomes the kind of awareness that is called mirror-like wisdom that reflects correctly. So you're using the fact that when you're angry, you're so analytical, you have so much to say to yourself, and you're swapping it to the clarity and mirror-like wisdom of that kind of like penetrating intellect. And maybe you've noticed people that trend in a Vajra family way. They're brilliant, intellectual, and maybe quick to anger or quick to like sarcasm. Something like that can be the case, or when we're in that mood ourselves. Yeah. So the Akshobhya Buddha family is the other Buddha family in Kriya Tantra. And then the final one is the Virachana Buddha family. So Virachana is the Tathagata Buddha family, or the Buddha family, to make it nice and confusing for us. White. Yeah, white. And the element you're working with there is space. Yeah, so 5 elements, the classic 4 plus space. So space is related to working with the elemental quality of ignorance. So it's like when I'm trying to explain a single pointed concentration and I say, be spacious, not spacey. Can you feel the quality where it's a similar element, but it's 2 different sides of the same vibe? Yeah, spacey, you're vagued out, you're off with the fairies. There's a dullness, you're kind of relaxed, but you're just kind of like, static, right? Yeah, and if someone talks to you, you're like, what? Yeah. Whereas spacious, you got that kind of bright, vivid clarity of a bright, clear dawn, where you're kind of like able to hold many, many things. It's kind of like archetypal open-mindedness. You can see many possibilities. You can see the way things are true from a lot of different angles. Yeah, where I see why someone wouldn't like this, but another person would like that same thing. I see how this would trigger prejudice in some people and connection in others. You're able to see lots of perspectives, spacious, not spacey. Yeah. And so that space-like quality, when you're working with ignorance, and then its flip side, which is called like the all-encompassing wisdom of Dharma Dhatu, because that's complicated, right? There's a lot of translations for that one, but kind of all-encompassing wisdom of Dharma Dhatu is what it leads to when you purify ignorance and you use the energy that accompanies ignorance for this wisdom. Is that when you have the habit of ignorance arise, you're able to transform the energy that accompanies it into a bright, vivid clarity, which doesn't necessarily imply a lot of words and a lot of conceptualization in a coarse form in your mind. It's kind of when you're in that space of, okay, maybe. Yet when you're truly in an open-minded space, when you're able to see paradox, when you're able to see dilemmas, when you're able to see different perspectives all at the same time, without needing anything to be the correct or the incorrect. You're like, yep, from a certain perspective, yep, from a certain perspective, yep. That spacious quality. So when you're in an ignorant state of mind, like as its dominant energy, what winds up happening is that you're just a little bit vague and distracted and forgetful. Yeah, when it's gone in its distorted way, then that spacious quality in the mind is just kind of losing focus. Yeah, it might be like you walk into a room to start something, and by the time you get to the room, you're like, what? Wait, what was I going to do in here? Something. Crap. Okay. Yeah, that kind of vibe that you can get. So it's not like as visceral a quality as anger or attachment. Like with a couple seconds of self-reflection, you know if you're trending a little bit angry or if you're trending a little bit attached. You can tell just by checking in with yourself for a few seconds, yeah? You're having a I want more or I want less. This is too much, this is not enough. Attachment, anger, aversion, attachment, back and forth all day. But when it's ignorance, it's harder to catch because it feels more benign. You're just kind of resting in a slightly forgetful, slightly vague, relatively friendly, sort of happy, neutral-ish place. That, yeah. And you don't cause tons of obvious trouble when you're in an ignorant place. But the door is open for all of the other afflictions to kind of like join in or co-opt it or fill the space with what they have to say. Yeah. So space chess is a really powerful one. And in Kriya Tantra, there's not a lot of deities that we practice that are related to Vairocana, more in highest yoga tantra. So, and a highest yoga tantra and yoga tantra, then you're starting to get into Ratnasambhava Buddha family and Amoghasiddhi Buddha family, which are working with pride and jealousy. So in Kriya Tantra, you're just kind of working with the base 3 poisons, knowing that all other negative states of mind are like flowing on from that. Yeah, so anger, attachment, ignorance are your 3 main poisons. And then when you elevate into the others, then you're looking at also jealousy, also pride. Not to say it's an exhaustive list. Yeah, something like that. So it's a very quick explanation of 5 Buddha families, yeah. And really, a lot of us practice these practices for a long time without having any idea which Buddha family they belong to. Yeah, we just practice them and maybe are interested to see that on a distracted day, you have more attachment, and on a focused day, you have more warmth and discriminating awareness. When you're in a Tara mode, you might notice that something like happening. Or you might notice when you're practicing a lot of Manjushri that your intelligence and precision and ability to assess and problem solve is a lot better than usual, unless you're having a bad day, in which case you're particularly grumpy. You might notice that, or not. But being more intentional about it can be an interesting kind of thought experiment. But at the end of the day, every single Buddha encompasses the energy of all 5 Buddha families. Yeah. And the 5 Buddha families are related to times of day. They're related to the 5 aggregates. They're related to, so the 5 gets repeated in so many different contexts in Tibetan Buddhism. The fact that prayer flags are of 5 colors is not an accident. So once you know that, you're going to see that 5 colors motif all over the place. Yeah, so like that. Yeah.
And just a quick follow on, or not so quick. This is all related to horoscopes and all that stuff.
Horoscopes,
Like,
not so much.
I'm just thinking like a Bhutan, they decide what your element is from when the year you were born.
Yeah, it's like adjacent, but horoscope stuff isn't something that we put a lot of energy into. Yeah. Because the danger is you think that I'm this way because of the planets rather than thinking the planets are this way because of us, right? Which is more the case. Yes, like what made the world? We made the world with our minds. So is there an influence that any elemental quality has over anything, including planets and sun? Sure, but don't give it so much power that you get superstitious. So it's not to say there isn't an influence or a relationship there is, but don't give it too much power. And it's mostly to do with like Tibetan medicine. Yeah. And like what's going to help give you health, life force, or clear certain things physically is when you start looking into those things. And then it's really practical, sort of like, okay, in this season, eating these foods is more helpful. And it's just really practical. And it's not so much about astrology. But yeah, if it makes you interested, it's okay. But yes, much precaution against superstition. So yeah, so use a grain of salt with horoscope stuff. Like it's useful information, but don't ever feel like it's fate, because that's our tendency, particularly as Westerners. If we got into other forms of astrology, is to think, oh, well, it's just what's going to happen in this life, isn't it? Yeah, my moon's in this house or whatever it is. And you start to get a little locked. Just take it as like interesting information. Yeah. But flexible information that you have some control over. Yeah, so you'll get more into that kind of thing if you look into Tibetan medicine, if you're wanting more details on that. Yeah, which is good stuff. It's very similar to Ayurvedic medicine. Yeah, other questions? Maybe? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a little one, like outside of meditation, would it be like, I don't know, appropriate to visualize Tara, like if you're in a really vulnerable moment, just like holding you, like, laying your head in her lap and she's like,
Yeah,
cutting your hair.
totally. 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 I mean, you can imagine she's above the crown of your head at all times, really. And also above the crown of everyone. Yeah. And once you have the empowerment, you can see yourself as Tara and see everyone else as Tara and see the environment as a pure land, as long as it doesn't make you weird. If it makes you weird, then just hold off until you get more commentary. Right. But what's interesting is divorce from empowerments or not is just like, what if you engage with someone's Buddha nature rather than their afflictions? What if you engage with your own Buddha nature rather than your afflictions? Then it becomes the dominant energy. If you're talking to someone's anger, their anger is going to come out. If you're talking to someone's Buddha nature, if they're at all in the mood for it, it will elicit it. We can bring out the best in each other if they're willing to play along. And of course, some people are just in a mood and they're not gonna, right? But it is interesting to kind of see if you can experiment with that, because, the sort of friends who always gossip, right? And when you get with them and they just like pick up into their like, whinging, what do we say, whining about politics or something and various political figures and how the world's going to hell, and they'll like go on a rant, very little prompting, right? But it could be that they're the same sort of person that could talk about ideas and could talk about problem solving and could talk about collaboration and could talk about, really elevated things if you brought that out in them, because they like that stuff too. It's already stuff they like. So they're meeting you, you're a condition for them, and then they have their habits they're coming to you with. You can help set the tone by speaking to that part that loves ideas and collaboration. And maybe you'll elicit it out because they do like that too. But you're just used to always like, being grumpy about politicians. And so that's the rut you fall into when you're together. So some of this tantric psychology you can work with even before you have the empowerment of how can I bring out the best in this person by speaking to the aspect that is health. Speak to that, and then sometimes it speaks back. Making sense. But yeah, definitely Tara is the one, if you're feeling in distress at all, the calling on Tara is a thing, and it really does help. And the swiftness of that energy kicks in very quickly. Yeah, and going to sleep in her lap is actually a very common advice for people who are going through tough times. Like, my own Lama has said this to me many times, and it sounds very like childlike in a way, right? And like, here I am, I'm like, what is the brilliant advice for my existential issue? And he's like, fall asleep in Tara's lap. I'm like, I was wanting more than that. Right? But surprisingly very effective. All right, thanks, boss. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. All right, well, shall we do the practice? Okay, we're going to do the one that says how to practice with Green Tara's mantra. So it's the tab that says Short Green Tara from POM, and in your PDF, it's the PDF online that's page 23. And so this one, it comes straight from the book. And then in the book, they have all the preliminary and dedication prayers in the appendices. So it's not all chunked together like this. But, in your own time with any of these practices you like from the book, you can always just make a Word document, copy paste like that. Just make sure you don't spread them around too freely because there is copyright. So having it open at the page, how to practice with Green Tara's mantra. We'll do all of the prayers first, and then we'll do the visualization.
I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. These remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightened. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Yadam Guru Ratnamandala Kamviyatayalam. And so really let the motivation settle in. Waking it up in your heart. Think that the transcendental wisdom of non-dual bliss and emptiness of all the Buddhas, which fully sees all existence, takes the form of Tara at your crown. This is the holy mind of Dharmakaya, the absolute Guru. Just as sentient beings act under the control of anger and attachment, Buddhas work for living beings under the control of compassion. At this time, the holy mind of all the Buddhas, the absolute Guru, manifests in this particular female form of Tara. With one face and 2 arms, she is in the aspect of a very beautiful 16-year-old girl. Her face is very peaceful, with a slight smile. Her eyes are not open widely, but are fine and a little rounded, very loving and compassionate. When we look at Tara, her eyes express compassion toward us. The look a loving mother gives her only child. Her hair is very dark, half down, half tied up. The center of her hair is a Nutapali flower as a crown. A tiara fastened in her hair is adorned with jewels. The central one being a ruby, symbolizing Amitabha, the principal Buddha of her Buddha family, the Padma or lotus family. So spend a moment with her face, three-dimensional and real. Radiant green. Moving down, her right hand rests on her right knee, palm outward, in the mudra of granting sublime realizations, indicating her ability to provide us with whatever they desire, all sentient beings, what they need, temporary and ultimate. Her left hand at her heart holds the stem of an Utpala flower, with her thumb and ring finger together, symbolizing the unification of method and wisdom. The other three fingers raised, symbolizing Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The stem she holds has three Utpala flowers, a bud, a flower that is opening, and a fully open flower, indicating that Tara is the mother of all the Buddhas, past, present, and future. Tara has fully developed breasts, is adorned in silken robes of royalty, and wears rainbow-colored stockings with a white half blouse. She is adorned with a necklace, bracelet, armlets, anklets, and so forth, as well as various scarves and jeweled garlands, symbolizing her attainment of the six perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom. Stabilizing the details of her upper body, arms, hands. Her right leg is extended, showing she is always ready to rise up and come to the aid of those who need her. Her left leg is drawn up, showing her renunciation of worldly desire. She has a moon disk behind her. She is adorned with the complete holy signs and exemplifications of a Buddha, stabilizing the whole body, radiant green, transparent light, three-dimensional and real. On her forehead is a white Om, the essence of the Vajra holy body. At her neck, a red Ah, the essence of the Vajra holy speech. At her heart, a blue Hum, the essence of the Vajra holy mind. From the Om at Tara's forehead, white nectar beams are emitted and enter you through your forehead, completely purifying all the obscurations and negative karmas you've accumulated with the body from beginningless rebirths until now. From the Ah at Tara's throat, red nectar beams are emitted and enter through your throat, completely purifying all the obscurations and negative karma accumulated with your speech from beginningless rebirths until now. From the Hum at Tara's heart, blue nectar beams are emitted and enter your heart, completely purifying all the obscurations and negative karmas accumulated with your mind from beginningless rebirths until now. Out of compassion for you and all living beings, Mother Tara has purified you. And so you can continue with this visualization or spread it to all sentient beings, their body, speech, and mind being purified as well, while we add the mantra. Om Tare Tu Re Soha. 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 And think without a delay of even a second, may I become Tara, and in each second free uncountable numbers of living beings from all their sufferings and lead them to full enlightenment. And because rather than following the selfish mind, you are using your life to serve others, because of your attitude of bodhicitta, Tara is extremely pleased with you. She melts into green light, enters through your forehead, and absorbs into you. Think my body, speech, and mind have been blessed to become Tara's Vajra holy body, holy speech, and holy mind. By receiving the blessings of Tara with a calm, devoted mind, you plant the seed to develop your mind and actually achieve Tara. One pointedly concentrate on the nature of Tara's holy mind. Once again, the absorption of Tara being the catalyst for your emptiness meditation. And then rejoicing in your merit, having done this retreat. Every moment that you chose focus over distraction. Every moment you chose to engage and go deeper. All of the moments of kindness to one another. All of the ways you support the center. And rejoicing in each other's practice as well. All of your fellow retreaters, all the staff and volunteers, all of the amazing Tara energy. And then rejoicing in all retreaters and all practitioners of all paths that include ethics, kindness, and wisdom at their heart. That these are the things that actually lead to a better world and to true transformation. How wonderful it is that they happen. As well as all of the secular work and charities done for the sake of sentient beings. And thinking of all of that merit of both ourselves and others, we dedicate. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more. And remember the emptiness of the three spheres, agent, action, object, lack inherent existence because they dependently arise. And may all of our teachers show the aspect of long life and good health. May we meet them in every life until enlightenment is achieved. So thank you, everybody. And big thank you to Anna and Ellie for helping online. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much, Ellie, and everybody at Vajrapani. And happy practicing.
Thank you so much. That was fabulous. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be able to do this with you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your practice.
Thank you.
On behalf of, I'm not sure if I'm on camera. I'll sit down.
This is Joe.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say on behalf of everyone here in the Gompa and on Zoom and the ones that, jumped in and out of Zoom, to send our deepest, sincerest thank you for coming again, giving this teaching, giving this precious retreat, continuing the Power of Mantra course, showing us all these amazing aspects to these deity practices and opening our minds up to Tantra, not just a worshipy way, but a practice way, an energy way, a compassionate. And so with that, we ask you long life, good health, hopefully not too much suffering with any pain, and to come back just quickly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Go team.
Go team.
All right. Thank you so much, you guys. And there's a short white Tara retreat and a short green Tara retreat on my YouTube channel with like the PowerPoint of the images and the text embedded if you're ever wanting to like jump right into it. But this one will get put up on the Vajrapani YouTube channel quite soon as well. So both options will exist for your practice benefit. So thanks, you guys. I'll see you later.